Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. Continuing on with Hari Bhakti Vilasa, we're in the 9th Vilasa. We finished the external worship of the deity of Lord Krishna with the Astadasa Akshara mantra, the 18-syllable Gopal mantra. And now we're doing, there's some things after the worship is over, like taking of Krishna Prasadam and Charanamrita and other types of flower prasadam and incense prasadam and lamp prasadam from the worship. We dealt with accepting Charanamrita and taking, and we also talked a little bit about the glories of tulsi leaves and amalaki fruits yesterday. So now we're going to continue on, and there's a different topic about prohibited times of bathing. So let's have a look at the text, and let's see how that somehow or other Prabhupada has, or Sanat Goswami Prabhupada have gone to this this topic. Okay, so I think in the last we were talking about sin cannot remain in a person whose body, mouth, and head are decorated with tulsi leaves and amalaki fruit at the time of death. If one comes in contact with low-class people, meaning low caste or non-Vaishnavas within a temple or after the completion of one's worship, he need not bathe. Because the word adi is used, it's understood that this rule applies to other places as well. So the idea is that if one has touched tulsi leaves and touched amalaki fruit, that he's pure, and that if he comes in contact with low-class people, either within a temple or after the completion of the Lord's worship, he need not purify himself again because he's pure. So we discussed that there was this rule also when taking Charanamrita, that you're not supposed to wash your hand after taking Charanamrita. Obviously, this refers to simple water-type Charanamrita and not the Panchamrita, which is made of the 5 products, milk, yogurt, honey, ghee, and sugar, which would necessitate us from cleaning our hand a little bit. But anyway, the idea is that your hand becomes purified by taking the Charanamrita, and therefore doesn't need to be purified again. Okay, because Charanamrita is so pure. So now we're talking about, because he's talking here about not needing to bathe after doing puja, so then he's going to also explain about prohibited times when you're not supposed to bathe. So once again, we discussed something about bathing before, I believe in probably in the third or fourth Vilasa, third Vilasa, I think. 3rd chapter, and there's a few different types of baths, but basically we can divide them into 2. A bath where we clean off material dirt from our body, which is usually the water bath, or called Varuna bath, right, in Sanskrit, and the other bath, which is a bathing of our consciousness, or doing a ritual bath, which is supposed to cleanse us not just externally but also internally in our mind, our ego, and intelligence. So the best type of bath, of course, is chanting the holy name of the Lord. That's a way of bathing, or chanting other mantras which purify us. So mantra bath or mental bath, or remembering the Supreme Lord, apavitra pavitra va savavashtam katopi va yasmanet pundarikaksham sabahya abhyantara suchihi. Right. So the word suchihi means pure, right? And people who are Vaishnavas, people who are Brahmanically inclined, Brahmins, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, samodhamatapa socham. Socham. These are different aspects of Brahminical life, or being pure, trying to be pure when we worship the Lord or when we do any activity. Just as Vaishnavas, we're always trying to be pure. So the word suchi means pure. And so that verse from Guru to Purana, apavitra pavitra va, means whether you're actually pure or not pure, or whatever situation you're in, if you remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, who has beautiful lotus petal-like eyes, you're purified within and without. Bahya, externally, and abhyantara, internally. So here we have, we're coming up to text 243 in the 9th chapter. So these are the prohibited times for bathing. So in the book, Smrityartha Sara, which is Smriti Artha Sara, right? Means Sara means the essence, Artha means the purpose, and Smriti means the Smriti Shastras or the Dharma Shastras. So it's the essence. This book is the essence of the meaning or the goal of the Smriti Shastras. It says one should not bathe during a festival at a holy place. So this is interesting because there are some festivals like Kumbh Mela where the whole idea is to bathe, right? There's certain festivals where people actually bathe as part of the festival. So it's not talking about that. But let's say you have a festival at a holy place. You have some utsava, some Rath Yatra, Rathotsava, or some big festival, procession, or whatever that happens at a temple or at a holy place like that. You don't need to bathe. Now, normally at the end of what's called an utsava, see here in the first line of the sloka, it says utsave. It means in a festival, utsava, right? Utsave means in a festival, right? So na snana yet. So we don't bathe. We don't bathe in a festival. So, but at the end of the festival, there's a certain type of bath that people take at the end of a festival called Avabrita Shnana. Shnana means bath. Avabrita Shnana is the bath that you take at the end of a vow or the end of a festival to complete the festival or to complete the vow. So that's accepted. But apart from that, you don't need to bathe because you're in such a holy place. And the festival is going on also, which is also a holy festival. So because of the holiness, the purity, the sanctity of the temple or the place or the festival, you don't need to bathe, right? So one should not bathe during a festival at a holy place after completing some ritualistic activity, right? So after doing certain purificatory rituals like Sandhyavandanam or whatever it is like that, we don't need to bathe afterwards. We should bathe before, but not afterwards. After seeing off one's well wishers and friends. So if you're saying goodbye, wishing bon voyage to or leaving the company of well wishers and friends or relatives, then you don't need to bathe after that, right? And after worshipping the Lord, you also don't need to bathe because you're purified by these things. And so therefore, it's actually sometimes we have to consider what people do sometimes. That if somebody does something, it can offend other people. So, like for instance, if I hand something to somebody and touch them, in some way, or come in contact with somebody, but I'm giving them something, and then afterwards I wash my hands, then that other person sees that, he may become offended, thinking that I'm thinking that by touching him or by coming in contact with him, I'm becoming contaminated. So it can be very offensive. So that's why it says friends and well-wishers and perhaps their family members and people like that. After seeing them off, we shouldn't take bath. It's just considered wrong, and all these other activities, ritual activities or festivals or worship of the Supreme Lord, these are all purifying activities. So we don't need to take bath after those activities. Of course, if we eat, if we go to the bathroom, for some reason, right, then we have to take bath again, right? If our cloth becomes stained or becomes dirty, if we've gone, through a dirty street then we should bathe again if we want to again perform some puja or some ritualistic activity. That's natural, but there are some reasons why we wouldn't take bath again. So anyway, here we have some more texts, 244 to 245 from the Vishnu Smriti, right? It says there's no need to bathe if one accidentally touches a dog eater. If one accidentally touches a dog eater, that's an interesting thing, or any other fallen soul who came to the temple of Vishnu for the purpose of serving him. So this is interesting because normally if we're outside, if we come in contact with some low-class person, for Vaishnavas, usually the low-class person is a person who's not a Vaishnava. So, in fact, in some shastras, it's explained that when we put on tilak, and if we see a person, even if we see a person like myself right now who's not wearing tilak, if you see a person who's not wearing some tilak, or something, sometimes when you go to India, you'll see people who say, "Oh, you know, maybe you're not wearing tilak, or you just took bath and you haven't put your tilak on yet. I don't want to see you right now because you're not wearing tilak. You're not auspicious by wearing the tilak. So therefore, I have to go and take bath because I've seen something which is inauspicious." So sometimes people feel like that. They see a dead body, or they touch a dead body, or they see even if they see a low-class person or a materialistic person, a person who's not a Vaishnava, who's not wearing tilak, they consider themselves to become contaminated, and then they either look at the sun or they go jump in a body of water with their clothes on, and to purify themselves. So, but here it says, even if you touch a dog eater accidentally, or any other fallen soul, materialistic person, right? If that dog eater or that fallen soul has come to the temple for the purpose of serving the Lord, or seeing the deity, or worshipping Lord Vishnu, then that person isn't considered to be contaminated. Even though that person might be from a low caste, or might not be initiated Vaishnava, or might not be a true Vaishnava, still, if he's come to the temple, he's considered to be pure. And so therefore, if you touch him, it's okay. You don't need to take a bath. Anything meant for taking the Supreme Lord in procession, right? Any paraphernalia that's used to take the Lord in procession, or is used for a wedding, or for the performance of a sacrifice, if touched by a low-class person, it does not become contaminated, because these things are supremely pure. The Rath Yatra cart, the palanquin, the vahanam, which the deity is taken on in procession, anything which is used in the performance of a wedding ceremony. Why wedding ceremony? Because at a wedding ceremony, the bride and the groom are considered for that day, for that ceremony, they're worshipped like Lakshmi Narayan. They're worshipped like Radha Krishna, like that. So when we do the Vara Puja, when the bridegroom comes, the father of the bride worships his future son-in-law, just as if he was Lord Vishnu. He offers him Padya and Arghya and Achmana and Madhuparka during the marriage ceremony. So there are many prayers that equate the bride and groom with the Lakshmi Narayan at that time, on that day. So anything which is meant for a Lord's procession, a wedding, some sort of other festival, or the performance of a sacrifice, if touched by a low-class person, it does not become contaminated. It's an interesting pramanam here, and you may quote it at some time, but it's something that we wouldn't have thought of, and therefore Gopal is giving it to us. Sanatana Goswami is explaining the point. So now in 246, it says, after completing one's worship of Lord Krishna in the morning, right? So here, this chapters 5 to 8 of Hari Bhakti Vilasa are all about this external worship of the deity that the devotee performs. The devotee has found a spiritual master. He's been initiated by a spiritual master. The spiritual master has given him the 18-syllable mantra and taught him how to do the worship. And the whole idea of having the Diksha mantra is to use the Diksha mantra, not just for japa, not just for meditation, not just for other purposes, not just to sit and to think about the esoteric meaning of the mantra, but also to use it practically in the external worship of the deity. So, and it says that in the beginning in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, it also says in the third Vilasa, right after initiation, the very first verses of the third Vilasa of Hari Bhakti Vilasa says, now that you have the mantra, the Diksha mantra, you should use it. And if you don't use it, it's considered bad. It's considered sinful if you don't use that mantra to actually worship the Lord. So here he's talking about worshiping after completing the worship of Lord Krishna in the morning, because we worship the deity usually in the morning, right? First thing. Those twice-born persons, here twice-born person means not just people who have upanayana samskara, right, who've become dvijas, right, officially, and have accepted the Gayatri mantra like that, but also people who have taken Vaishnava initiation, right, and they've become born again Vaishnavas, as Vaishnavas. So, and so twice born persons who belong to the three Varnas, right? We're talking about three Varnas. Here, does it mention, it says Dvija? Exactly three Varnas I don't see being mentioned actually in the Sanskrit, but this is what the translator has translated as, especially Brahmins, right? So there are three higher Varnas, or classes or castes called Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, right? The intellectuals, the administrators, and the entrepreneurs, right? And those people should carefully study devotional scriptures, right? Especially. So we can this verse here, we can take it to mean that after we perform the worship of the Lord, right? And we've taken the prasadam, we've taken the flower prasadam, the lamp prasadam, the incense prasadam, the charanamrita, the Lord's food prasadam, food offerings, leftover food offerings. Okay, we've honored all of those things. And after that's finished, we can then engage in study of devotional scriptures. We can study the scriptures. In other words, bathing and worshiping the Lord should be done before studying the scriptures. So this is normally a Vaishnava's day is divided up into 5 parts. So we have Abhigamana, Upadana, Ija, Swadhyaya, and Yoga. These are the 5 sections. This is called Panchakala Kriya. Panchakala Kriya. So there's a book called Panchakala Kriya Deepa, right, which explains these 5 sections. So the first section is you get up, you have to take bath, you have to put on fresh clothes and fresh tilak and everything like that. After that's finished, you have to, that's called Abhigamana, and then Upadana means you have to go and you have to collect collect all the paraphernalia and all the samagris, all the ingredients for doing the worship of the Lord. So such as flowers, lamps, incense, tulsi leaves, whether if you're using durva, darba, kusha, akshata, we have to collect, some of this. We have to collect all the chandana. We have to collect all the different scents and things, all the flowers. We have to collect, if we're worshiping the deity and we're offering clothes, and we have to get the clothes and the crowns and the flute and the staff and all the jewels and all the what we call a bharanam. So we have to get everything together. That's called upadana. Then we have to perform the actual worship of the Lord. That's called ija, or we can also call it puja, right? And then after that's finished, the next section is called swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means swa adhyaya. Adhyaya means learning or lesson or a lesson, and swadhyaya means my own lesson. So self-study. Now, during that time of self-study, if one is a teacher, he can also teach. He could also attend other people's kalakshepams. The word kalakshepam means literally killing time. So he can attend other person's lectures or other person's lessons, and he can literally spend his life like this. Spend his life reading the scriptures himself, or hearing others explain the scriptures, or repeat the different kathas, the different stories of the pastimes of the Lord. Right? What does Lord Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Janma karma chameya divyam. My birth and activities are completely divine. And if you know them, then you don't have to take birth in this world again. So this is something that people do. All Hindus do this. Vaishnavas especially do this. Right? We want to shravanam, listen to, kirtanam, chant, Vishnu Smaram, and then remember the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, like that. So we hear about and we chant. So hearing about is not just hearing japa, but it's also hearing and studying the different scriptures. We say sometimes that Vaishnavas, they hear with their eyes and see with their ears, like that. So they hear with their eyes by reading the scriptures like that. They hear with their eyes, and they see with their ears, like that. We see or we realize the Supreme Lord by listening to the katha, listening to the stories about him, like that, about his different leelas, his birth and activities. In other words, bathing and worshipping the Lord should be done before the study of scriptures, right? So now text 247 says, it is said, we don't know where this is said, but somewhere it's said, Shruti and Smriti are called the two eyes of a Brahmana. The word used here is Vipranam, or Vipranam. The word Vipra not just means a Brahmana, but it means a learned Brahmana. Here in this context, it means a learned Vaishnava, a learned Brahmana. But therefore, in the absence of one, a Brahmana is partially blind, and in the absence of both, he's totally blind. Okay, so we have the Shruti, which is otherwise called Nigama, and we have the Smriti, which is called Agama, like that. So we have the Shruti is considered the Vedic Shastras, which means the Rig Veda, the Yajurveda, the Uttara Veda, the Sama Veda, right? The Samhitas, the Aranyakas, the Brahmanas, and the Upanishads. These are the sections of the Vedas, right? And there are some Upavedas, some smaller Vedas too, like Dhamma Veda, Ayurveda, different parts of the Veda. And then we have, and these make up Vedic knowledge, and we have also got the different Vedangas, Angas of the Veda, which means like Shiksha, Nirukta, Chanda, Jyotish, Kalpa, Shiksha, Nirukta, Vyakarna, Chanda, Jyotish, and Kalpa. These are the 6 Vedangas, okay? And the 6 Vedangas represent different limbs of the body of the person, or of the Veda, let's say. So the Vedangas, they're the bodies, the limbs of the Veda. So what are they? Pronunciation, Shiksha. Vyakarna means grammar. Nirukta means etymology or word meanings. Chandas is poetic meter, like that. Jyotish is astrology and astronomy, right? Mathematics is included in that. And Kalpa is ritualism, like that. And they represent different limbs of the Veda body, the body of the Veda, right? So the Shiksha represents the nose of the Veda Purusha. The Shiksha is the pronunciation. The Vyakarna, or the grammar, represents the mouth by which we can speak. The Nirukta means the etymology by which we can understand the meaning of the words. Is the ears, right? The Shiksha, Vyakarna, Nirukta. Chandas is the poetic meter by which we walk, so the legs by which we go through the verses of the scriptures. Jyotish is the eyes by which we see past, present, and future, astrology, right? And Kalpa is the hands by which we perform the rituals and perform the devotional activities, like that. So that is the Veda Purusha and the Vedangas. So the Veda and the Vedangas. This is all called Shruti. The Vedas and what's associated with the Vedas. Now, to explain the Shruti, we have the Smriti. Now, what is the Smriti? The Shruti is what is heard. The Vedic seers of the Vedas, they have heard in their meditation, in their mind's eye, they have realized that they've seen the eternal verses of the Veda, which are never created. They're apurusheya, they're not authored, like that. Now, the Smriti is to explain that, because sometimes the Vedic literatures, the direct Vedic literatures, are difficult to understand. So sometimes we have these other books of scripture, like the Ramayana, Mahabharata, which are called itihasas or histories. We have the 18 Mahapuranas and other smaller Puranas, right? 6 of which are in the mode of goodness, 6 of which are in the mode of passion, 6 of which are in the mode of ignorance, right? So for Vaishnavas, the Sattvika Puranas, the ones that are in the mode of goodness, like the Vishnu Purana, Bhagavad Purana, and some other Puranas, Matsu Purana, etc., like that, Dhamma Purana. And these are considered to be explanations of the Vedas. So similarly, like the Mahabharata, which we get the Bhagavad Gita, the Vishnu Sahasranama in, right? These are very important scriptures. The Ramayana, which explain the philosophical understanding of the Upanishads and which come in the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are also divided into 2 sections broadly. according to topic. So the first section is what we call Karma Kanda. The second is called Jnana Kanda, and sometimes also called Upasana Kanda. Upasana means worship. So the Kandas, or the two sections of the Vedas, the first is the Karma Kanda, is a section on works, on rituals, the section on rituals. So the section on rituals, like that, is more or less explained by the Dharma Shastras, such as Manusmriti, Parashara Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Vishnu Smriti. There are these, I think, 12 or 18 Smriti Shastras. Parashara being, Smriti actually says that it's more for Kali Yuga specifically, but the most famous one of them is the Manusmriti, like that. This Dharma Shastra, that has to do with explaining Karma Kanda. Whereas the Vedanta, or the Upanishads, the philosophical section of the Vedas, is explained by the other scriptures like the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the Satvika Puranas, right? So, and in fact, these other scriptures are called sometimes the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Satvika Puranas are sometimes called the fifth Veda. So there are some places that they're called the fifth Veda, because they explain the philosophical portion of the Veda, the Upanishads. Okay, so that's a breakdown of Shruti and Smriti. If you didn't understand what Shruti and Smriti was, you need to know more about what is exactly contained within Shruti and what exactly is contained within Smriti. But the Goswamis of Vrindavan are very famously, they quote Shruti Smriti Purana di Pancharatra Vidim Vina. So they mention different types of scriptures, and they mention that they should be followed, like that. So specifically Vaishnavas, we specifically want to follow the philosophical, we have to follow very carefully the philosophical doctrines of Vaishnavism, which are based on Vedanta, right? At the same time, in practical life, people sometimes adopt some of the social rules that come in the Smriti Shastras. Now, Vaishnavas don't fully adopt all of the rules of Smriti. For instance, we have Manusmriti, and Vaishnavas don't follow all of the rules in Manusmriti, like that. But there are some Vaishnavas who adopt more of the rules of Manusmriti and less of the rules of Smriti Shastras, like that. So it's understandable. Those persons who fully embrace and keep as their highest scriptures the Dharma Shastras, like Manusmriti, those people are called, they're the most orthodox people who follow the Smritis. We all follow the Smritis to a certain extent. We accept the moral views of the Smritis, like Manusmriti, etc. But, right, we also, as long as they don't contradict basic principles of Vaishnava philosophy, we can accept them. The Smritis, however, when they're followed in toto, which I don't know anybody who is fully following all these Smritis today, but the people who do that and who put more emphasis on that are called smartas. The word smarta doesn't have anything to do with their intelligence being greater. It means, it's not a word, it's not the English word smarta, it's S-M-A-R-T-A, smarta. Smarta means a person who follows more closely Smriti. He follows Smriti more. He puts more emphasis on Smriti. A person who is not a smarta, and Vaishnavas tend not to be smartas, they're not called smartas, is a person who follows the Smriti, but there are certain things in the Smriti that he doesn't accept, that he may not accept, because they may contradict other things in the Veda, which are considered to be a higher scripture. There's hierarchy amongst these scriptures, right? So we say in the Harivamsa of the Mahabharata, which is the beginning of setting the scene of the Mahabharata, Harivamsa talks about certain things about the Lord incarnating in different incarnations. And of course, the Mahabharata is the story of basically Krishna and the Pandavas. And in that, Harivamsa it says, Satyam Satyam Punah Satyam Udrityam Bhujamuchate Veda Shastram Param Nasti Nadevam Keshavat Param. So what it's saying is it's the truth, it's nothing but the truth. I'll say it again and again, it's the truth 3 times. And I'll hold my hand above my head with my palms folded in prayer position. And I'll say to you, there is no scripture greater than the Vedas, and there is no God, there is no deity greater than Lord Keshava, Lord Krishna, like that. So this is a statement made in Harivamsa, right? Veda Vyasa, who of course compiled Mahabharata. So that's why Mahabharata is sometimes called the fifth Veda, but some other books are also called the fifth Veda. The Bhagavatam is also a very great Shastra, the Sattvic Puranas, like Vishnu Purana and the Bhagavatam. They're considered great Shastras, especially for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Bhagavad Purana is considered to be Krishna Swadam Apagate Dharma Jnana Divya Saha Kalona Purana called Gunoditaha. It's considered to be the spotless Purana, the greatest, one of the greatest Shastras. Okay, and it's considered to be like an incarnation of Krishna that arose just like the sun after Lord Krishna left this planet. The Bhagavatam arose as a sun and is a great scripture. So all of these scriptures have to be studied. And the Brahmana or the Vipra, the intelligent person, here it says Vipra means a learned person, right? That learned person, that learned Brahmana or that learned Vaishnava, he should be studying these things. And he can keep the one eye as the Shruti and one eye as the Smriti, like that. And if he doesn't take notice of both of them, he's considered to be partially blind. So a person who emphasizes only the Smriti Shastras, like Manu, etc., like that, we call him a smarta, and we say this person is partially blind because he's not taking into consideration Vedanta and the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Veda and Vedangas. A person who's only interested in the Vedangas, there are some people in or the Vedas. There are people in India, for instance, the Arya Samaji people. They are only interested in Vedic things, and they discount completely the Puranas, the Sattvic Puranas, the Itihasas, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata. They completely do not take any notice of Dharma Shastras and things like that, but they're only interested in the Vedic works like that. So those persons are also partially blind. So we should have both these things. We should have an understanding of both these things. Of course, as I said, the Vedas and the Vedanta is considered to be more a higher hierarchy of scriptures than the other Shastras. In terms of when we find something which appears to be contradictory and we can't rationalize it, then we have to accept one over the other. And so we accept the Vedic version over the version coming in, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Puranas, or whatever it is, the Shmitis, especially the Dharma Shastras. Okay. But normally we read those books too, and we study those books too, the Shmitis, in order to explain the Shrutis to us. Okay, because the Shrutis are very difficult to understand. So this is the idea between Shruti and Shmiti. Therefore, in the absence of one, Brahmana or a Vipra or a learned person is considered partially blind. In the absence of both, he's totally blind. So we have some people like the Buddhists. They don't accept any of these scriptures, and then we consider them the only things that they accept are logic and sense perception, right? Nothing outside of sense perception and logic. And so they don't accept these authoritative statements, right? Maybe they accept authoritative statements by Buddha, but not by anybody else, not by any of these great sages, or certainly not from which are unauthored in the Vedas. So they don't accept those. Those are called Nastika religions, atheism and Jainism and Buddhism, where they don't accept the authority of the Vedas and the Vedic scriptures. So those people are considered to be totally blind. Okay, so that's an explanation. Full explanation of that verse. So continue on with 248, we have the Vyasa Gita section of Korma Purana. There are other Gitas apart from Bhagavad Gita. Gita means song. And so this is a song of Vyasa, which comes in the Korma Purana. And here's what's being said. O Brahmanas, a person who endeavors for something else rather than studying the Vedas must certainly be considered a fool and non-Vedic. Indeed, Brahmanas should not even talk to such a person. So the whole raison d'etre, if I'm allowed to lapse into French here, right? The raison d'etre, or the actual modus operandi, if we say in Latin, the reason for being. Raison d'etre means the reason for being in English. The whole reason for being of a Brahman is to perpetuate the knowledge of the Vedas and the Vedic scriptures, right? So this is what a Brahman is supposed to do. He is supposed to be a living embodiment of the scriptures and he's supposed to memorize the scriptures and to pass them on unchanged, especially the Vedas, which never change like that. As for the Smriti Shastras, right, he's supposed to teach and to study those things too. So what are the occupations of a Brahmin or an intellectual in Vedic society or Vaishnava society? Yajana, Patana, Patana, Dana, and Pratigriya. So he is supposed to, Yajana. He is first of all supposed to offer sacrifice. He's supposed to worship the Supreme Lord. Yajana. And Yajana, he is also meant to show others how to perform sacrifice or to teach others how to worship the Lord. So these are the first two things. Yajana, right? We notice that the Yajana, the puja comes first, and then afterwards comes the study of the scriptures. So Yajana, then Patana. Patana means he has to study the scriptures, study the Vedas, study the Smritis, study the Shrutis, right? Then he also has to teach those to others, right? So Yajana, he worships and he teaches others to worship. Patana, he studies and he teaches others the scriptures, right? Patana, Dana and Pratigriya. First thing is he has to give charity. And second thing is he can also receive charity. So these are the 6 occupations of a Brahmin. Yajana, Patana, Dana, and Pratigriya. And we can say Vipranam also, an intelligent person, right? One of the intellectuals in society, right? Everybody's not an intellectual, but there's a few people. They're teachers, they're intellectuals, and those people are considered to be Brahmins. This caste system comes from the Vedas itself, from the Purusha Sukta. It's mentioned that the social body, the Virata Purusha, is divided up into 4 parts, right? The head, the arms, the stomach or the thighs, and the feet, like that. So Brahmanosya Makamasid Bahu Rajan Yukutaha Urutarasiyad Vaishaha Padhyam Sudro Jayata. So the Brahman, the intelligentsia was his head, the head of society. The arms, the protectors, the politicians, the administrators, the military class are the arms. They are called Kshatriyas. The belly that provides nourishment to the whole body, right? The entrepreneurs, the businessmen, and the independent farmers, the persons who increase wealth and increase food, right? Right, to nourish the society. Right, these are called the Vaishyas. And then the people who work for them, the workers on which the body goes, right, or the feet, right, these people are called Shudras, right, so the workers. So they may work for the Vaishyas, or they may work for the Kshatriyas, or they may work for the Brahmins. But they work for others. This division is part of the Varnashrama system. There's also a system of stages of life, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, which means us student life, married life, retired life, renounced life. Right, so there's also the stages of human life like that. The different stages apply to different varnas, okay? So it's not that every varna and every ashrama are mixed. So if we have 4 varnas and 4 ashramas, we don't have 16 combinations, we only have 10 combinations, right? Because brahmanas, people who are intellectuals like that, they can take to all 4 of the ashrama stages of life. Brahmacharya, student, married, retired, renounced. The Kshatriyas, the administrators, they take to only 3: the student, the married, and the retired. Right? They go to the forest at the end. They never become sannyasis. Okay, so then you have the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas take to only 2. They're students and then they're married, grihastas, and they continue their life like that. They don't take vanaprastha. They don't retire, and they don't go to renounce. Right? They don't go to become sannyasis. Okay, so then this is the Vedic system. So then in the Sudras, for them only 1 ashram. That is the married ashram. As soon as they reach maturity, they are married off, and they get married, and they remain householders the whole life. So there's no even student phase for them. They're simply apprentices under their fathers, or they take some apprenticeship and they learn some trade. They learn to serve the other classes. So this is the idea of Varnashram. So anybody who ever talks to you about Varnashram, you say, okay, there's 4 varnas, there's 4 classes, and there's 4 stages of life. So how many different types of people are there in Varnashram? If the person says to you there are 16, he doesn't know what he's talking about. According to the Vedic civilization, there is 10. There are 10 combinations. There are 10 combinations. So if somebody doesn't know that, they don't know the first thing about Varnashram. But there are some misunderstandings about Varnashram going around with people. People don't understand exactly how it works. In fact, there's a mention amongst Vaishnavas, we mentioned that there's different types of Varnashram. There's the Daivi Varnashram and there's the ordinary Varnashram. The ordinary Varnashram is according to 100% of the rules of the Shmiti Shastras like Parashara Shastra, Parashara Shmiti and Yajnavalkya Shmiti and Vishnu Shmiti and even Manu Shmiti, right? So if you follow that completely 100%, that is what we call ordinary materialistic Varnashram. If we do not follow that, if we in fact have some Vaishnava principles which are higher principles or philosophical principles than those social rules, right? And we adapt that, that is called Daivi Varnashram, not completely following 100% the Shmiti Shastra, but understanding that certain philosophical principles will override certain of these karma kanda ideas and things that are based upon material designations or caste by birth designations and disqualifications by birth, by low birth or gender or whatever it is like that that come in the Dharma Shastras. So, okay, so there's some differences between people's ideas and whether and how much or how little of the Dharma Shastras they adopt. But certainly, the Brahman's job is to try to keep the knowledge going and to keep everybody understanding. And then practically, the administrators in a society they have to apply the knowledge that the Brahmins keep, right? So a person who is an intelligent person, a Vipra, right? He has to study the Vedas and he has to study also the other Vedic literatures, the Shruti and the Smriti. And if he doesn't, then he's considered to be a fool and non-Vedic. So indeed, Brahmana should not even talk to such a person because such a person is considered to be contaminating because they don't have any knowledge of either the Vedas, the Shruti or the Smriti, and therefore there's no point in talking to such people. But of course, there are some groups like that, the Buddhists, the Jains, atheists, some different types of people who we have to know also their philosophies and we have to be able to defend the Vedic version, the version that's given to us in the Shruti and Smriti, and the authority and the different doctrines and practices of Vaishnavism. And therefore we should know those things and we should be able to rationally defeat people with other mentalities and other ideas. Even if they don't accept any Vedic literature, we must be expert in projection, anumana, in sense perception and logical inference, and being able to point out to them their mistaken understandings. Okay, so it's better not to talk to such a person because one becomes contaminated by talking to somebody. It may come that one has to discuss with people like that. So that's why one should study. Right after he does the puja, he also has to study the Shastra. So now continuing on, 249 to 250, O Brahmanas, you should not be satisfied to simply study the Vedas. If one does not follow what he studies, he will suffer. Just as a cow suffers when she falls into the mire, right? So it's not a matter of just simply armchair philosophy. So like there are some philosophers in the West, they speak about philosophy, they think about philosophy, they write about philosophy, but they don't actually follow the philosophy that they propound. So we have existentialists and all sorts of people who have written some nice words, or you have some of the old Greek philosophers, maybe their society wasn't actually following the philosophy that they were preaching. So this is considered to be wrong. If you have a philosophy, if you have philosophical principles, you should try to live according to those philosophical principles. If you want to live according to Manusmriti says very clearly in Manusmriti, the whole of Manusmriti is based upon caste by birth. So if you adopt that system, If you're a smarta and you adopt that system, you also have to adopt this idea of caste by birth. No doubt. I can show you. 10th chapter, Manusmriti, verse 5, it says very clearly that caste is by birth and not by anything else. And therefore, that this is the basis of all the rules in Manu are based on caste, right? All the ideas of the different ashramas are also based on caste. And so therefore, one has to, in fact, people sometimes they think Manusmriti has rules mostly for everybody, but the rules in Manusmriti are not for everybody. They're mostly for Brahmins. 98% of the rules in Manusmriti are for Brahmins, and then there's some for Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. There's very few for Shudras at all. Shudras have no rules at all to follow, practically hardly any. They just have to keep out of the way of the others, and they have to not transgress some certain moral rules with other castes, but amongst themselves, Sudras have practically no rules like that. So people don't understand that about Manusmriti. So in fact, unless one is one of the higher castes, according to Manu, he has no right to read Manusmriti, even to discuss it or to even study it like that. So if anybody's interested, they can contact me. I can give you the critical edition by Patrick Olivelle of Manusmriti. It gives you the Sanskrit. It gives you also the English and explains all the variations in the different manuscripts and the commentaries. And you can go through it and you can have a look, and you can see quite clearly in the 2nd chapter of Manusmriti it says that one who is not a Dvija by birth is not qualified to study it or to know this knowledge. Okay. So anyway, here it says, "O Brahmana, you should not be satisfied with simply studying the Vedas." Right? So there are some Brahmins, they simply study the Vedas, they repeat the Vedas, they chant the Vedas, and that's it. So if one does not follow what he studies, he will suffer like a cow who suffers when she falls in the muck, in the mire, in the mud. So a person who nicely studied the Vedas but did not understand or discuss the true purport is considered to be blind or a Shudra. So what is the purport of the Vedas are understood in the Vedanta, the end of all knowledge. The Veda means knowledge. Vedanta means the end of all knowledge. The end of the Vedas is in fact the Upanishad section, which is called the Jnana Kanda, and also sometimes called the Upasana Kanda because it leads to the worship of the Lord under proper philosophical ideas, right? So we have the Karma Kanda, which is mostly rituals and sacrifices meant to lead us to heaven or to a better life in the next life. And the Jnana Kanda with the Upanishads, which are meant to lead us to moksha, to liberation from this world. And one has to study that. Now, if one is unable to understand the Vedanta, which is very deep philosophical studies, then one has to also take, and even if he can understand it, he can take the Smriti Shastras, the Itihasas and Puranas, right? The Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Satvika Puranas, to explain the philosophy that's given in the Upanishads. If it's not understandable to him, even if it's understandable to him, the elaboration of it is given in these scriptures like the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the Satvika Puranas, especially the Bhagavad Purana. So it's not that the Bhagavad Purana is just a bunch of stories about Krishna's activities and that we're just reading stories about Krishna's life. It contains deep, deep philosophy. So all of these scriptures contain deep, deep philosophy, and one should not just repeat them or just know them by heart like the Vedas, but one has to understand the meaning, and one has to understand the esoteric meanings, the inner meanings, and the philosophy, the philosophical doctrines behind these shastras. So a person who nicely studies the Vedas but did not understand or direct the true port is considered to be blind or a Shudra. So for Shudras and sometimes for people who are considered to be a very low class, if they're not interested in the philosophical purport, for them they can just listen to the nice stories. And by listening to the stories of the Lord's birth and activities, they also become purified and they can also reach the ultimate abode of the Lord. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita 9:32? He says, Striya Vaishastata Sudrastepi Yanti Param Gatim. But there are all these different types of people, and some of these groups of people right? Or even animals, for instance, don't have the intelligence to study the purport of the scriptures, but they can do something. They can serve the Lord in some way, right? So these other groups of people, they can also serve the Lord in some way. They can't maybe fully understand if they're not very intelligent. They can't fully understand the deep purports of the Vedas and even of the other scriptures. But they can also attain moksha. They can also attain the supreme destination. So that's what it says. Such a person cannot obtain the ultimate goal of life, which is moksha. Or for Gaudiya also, they say prema, the supreme love of God, right? To really love God means to know him, right? To love someone means you have to know them first to love them. So in order to know God, you have to study the scriptures. You have to study the philosophical purports. If you don't know him, you cannot love him, right? Nobody can say to me, if I say, oh, I love that person. Well, who is she? What's her name? What's her family like? What does she do for a living? Where does she live? What car does she drive? Well, I don't know. I just see her, and from externally, I just love her. I love her like that. So love at first sight or something. Somebody says that. You see a beautiful lady, beautiful girl, and they say, oh, I love that person like that. They can't really love her. It's very superficial unless you know about the person. So the same thing with God. If we know God, if we understand God, if we know the philosophy, then we can truly love him like that. No true love can come about without knowledge like that. So, of course, the gopis in Vrindavan they were very simple girls, and they loved Krishna. They loved Krishna as their friend, as their boyfriend, like that. So they didn't have this deep realization of Krishna as God. They didn't understand like that because they were covered by yoga maya. Krishna wants them to react to him not as a god, but as a beautiful cowherd boy that he is. So this is Leela. This is a Leela. But so this is sort of a play. But in actual fact, the Vaishnavas, we should know who God is, and we should be able to identify all of his divine attributes and the philosophy behind worshiping him and everything. It's not that we should simply take Hari Bhakti Vilas, read all the rituals in it, perform all the rituals without any knowledge whatsoever of any of the philosophy behind it. That's not the way. So here, it's very important that after the puja is finished, right, one sits down and one studies the philosophy of the Vedas, the Shruti and the Smriti, right? And that one should know that in order to obtain the ultimate goal of life, which is moksha and prema, or liberation and love of God, true love of God. Okay. So continuing on, 251 to 252, it says, one should carefully study the Vedic literature every day, and when he becomes expert, he should teach others. Right. So for a Vaishnava, it's recommended that he surrender his learning and teaching at the lotus feet of Krishna and have faith that he will earn his livelihood without resorting to any other endeavor. So very few people can do this. Very few people can do this, that they learn so much that they're so expert in learning the Vedas, learning the scriptures, the Shruti and the Smriti, and teaching it to others, that they can actually earn their livelihood from that. Like that. And actually, some people disagree and they say, no, we shouldn't try to earn our livelihood from that. That is like prostituting our intelligence, that we are, giving a lecture or something like that and expecting to get some donation or to maintain ourselves like that. That's not the way it is, right? Remember the different activities of a Brahmana are yajana, patana, patana, dana, and pratigriya. When he performs sacrifice for others, those others should give him dakshina. That dakshina is not a salary. That is the outpouring of the yajamana, the sponsor, to the priest. And the yajamana gives freely and fully. He wants to satisfy the priest by giving him the dakshina, like that. But the priest is not demanding that particular look. It's you have to pay me by the mantra. Each letter that I chant, each syllable that I chant, you have to pay me so much like that. And if I chant a longer mantra, you have to pay me more. It's not like that. So yajana. So yajana, patana patana, when he studies, but he also teaches. When he teaches the Vedas, when he teaches the Shruti and the Smriti, when he teaches the doctrines and practices of Vaishnavism, then he also shouldn't take payment for that in a set fixed amount like that. But he can be recompensed. The idea of Guru Dakshina, teacher, the word Guru means teacher. So anybody who's teaching you anything, that person is a Guru in Sanskrit, like that. I know that there might be a lot of baggage in people's minds around the word Guru, but it simply means teacher, right? Guru means darkness. Guru means light. If you person who takes you from darkness to light on any subject is a Guru, is a teacher. So a teacher, somebody teaches you the ABCs, he's a teacher. If somebody teaches you a PhD in science, he's a teacher. Teacher's a teacher, right? Like that. Now, a spiritual teacher, of course, is considered greater than a material teacher because of the subject that he teaches is spiritual. That's all. But in any case, the idea here is to learn the scriptures and to teach them. And after teaching them, the students who learn them can also reward the teacher with what's called Guru Dakshina, like that. The teacher, for his part, always thinks of himself as a student and thinks that by teaching others, he will be enforcing, or he will be reinforcing the knowledge that he has learned from his teachers, like that. So that's why we always start Asmat Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Guru Bhyo Namaha. I offer my respects to all my teachers, all their teachers, and all teachers, because all of the people who I have received the knowledge, any knowledge from or anything from, like that, I now wish to pay them back. I can never repay what they have given me, right? I can never repay them for the knowledge that they have done. We say, Ajnana Timanandasya Jnananjana Shalateya Chakshurunaitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jnananjana. Timanandasya means like a blind well. It means an old well. Somebody dug a well and then somehow or other it's unused and it was covered over by straw. And somebody was walking along and they fell into this well. And there's nobody there to save them. And they're down the bottom of the well. They're in darkness. They're complete darkness. They can't see anything. They can't do anything to get out. They're completely helpless. Then a person comes along, looks down in the hole, and he sees this person. He throws a rope down to him and he pulls him up. That person is compared to the Guru. Ajnana Timirandasya, Jnana. We are in the blind well of ignorance, of Ajnana, of having no knowledge. Timirandasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya. But with the Jnananjana, with the ointment or the medicine of knowledge, right? We've fallen down into the well. We've hurt ourselves. The teacher brings us up. He helps us by putting the medicine, the ointment of knowledge on us, and cures our broken body from falling in the well that is fallen in the well. Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksu, and we are blind as if we have our eyes closed, and he forcibly opens our eyes and lets us see reality as it is, like that. Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksu, by putting that ointment on our eyes, he allows us to open our eyes and see the reality as it is. This is the analogy given in this verse. This is from Guru Vastika. It's an astika, it's an 8-verse thing about the Guru. So it's that. So we always think like that. We always think that whatever we've got, whatever we're passing on, we're passing it on because we are paying it forward. In modern terms, we say paying it forward. Somebody did an act for us which was we can never repay. Somebody helped us in such a way that we can never repay. If somebody saves your life, there's some incident and you were going to die and somebody came and saved you. He's a hero and he saved you, like that. You couldn't have saved yourself, but you're saved, like that. Then you owe your life to that person and you always want to repay that person that debt, but you can never repay that person that debt. That is the way we feel about our gurus, all of our gurus, and all of our teachers. And we should therefore think that by giving this to others, by helping others, by showing others the scriptures, like that this in some way is a way of repaying or paying it forward what our guru has given to us, what our teachers have taught to us. So that's the point. The point is we should be learning and then teaching to others. And somehow or other, if we get compensated from that in either kind or by money or whatever it is like that, it's called Guru Dakshina. It is a something that is a heartfelt. The student always feels that he should do this for his teachers, but the best way that he can do it is not by cash or by kind, but the best way that the student can compensate for the incredible gift of knowledge that the teacher has given to him. The best way that he can do that is by paying it forward and teaching it to others. That's the best way. And that's the way that satisfies the teacher the most. Okay, so yajana patana patana, teaching the scriptures, right? Dana and pratigriya, except giving charity. First of all, giving charity. Dana means giving charity. It doesn't mean giving dakshina. There's a difference between dakshina and charity. Dakshina means that the priest performs a ceremony for me, right? I engaged a priest to help me perform a particular ritual, and I have to compensate that priest. Otherwise, the priest gets all the punya, all the auspiciousness, all the fruits of the ceremony will go to the priest, right? If I don't give dakshina. So as a sponsor, I have to give the priest dakshina. I have to satisfy him like that. That's dakshina, right? Dana is simply when I give somebody, I donate to somebody, there's no reason for it at all, because that person is a worthy recipient of charity, a worthy recipient of charity. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about charity in the mode of goodness. That's charity in the mode of goodness, to the right person at the right time for the right reason. And then there's charity in the mode of passion, charity in the mode of ignorance. These types of charity we should try to avoid, where we're giving the wrong type of charity to the wrong people at the wrong time or for the wrong purpose, right? So, of course, we're not talking only about that here. So dana is charity, proper charity, charity in the mode of goodness. Look it up in Bhagavad Gita, see how it's supposed to be done. Charity. There's no reason for giving it. You're just giving it freely, like that. And then accepting charity. Accepting charity. Somebody sees a person cultivating spiritual knowledge, teaching it to others, performing the worship of the Lord, teaching other people to worship the Lord, and just out of the blue, that person gives a donation to that person. That is charity. That is pratigriha. The person can accept a Brahman, a person, a Vipra, an intellectual, a person who's learned in the scripture, like that, Vaishnava, specifically a Vaishnava. He can accept that. He can accept those things as well. Okay, so then it says, if he feels no difficulty in maintaining himself, a devotee should spend his time hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord in the association of saintly persons. So such people who are Vipras or who are learned Brahmanas or learned Vaishnavas in the scripture like that, they like to associate with other people who are also similarly learned like that. And even if they associate with people who have more knowledge than them and they learn from them, they associate with people who have slightly less knowledge than them and they teach them. They associate with others on the same level, and those others, they discuss different points with those others, and they learn back and forth. They reciprocate with their knowledge. Okay. So these are some of the ways that Vaishnava devotees reciprocate amongst each other. So now we're talking about discussion of livelihood, because we got into discussion about livelihood, about how to earn your living as a Vaishnava. So here's some discussion, right? After you got up, after you did your what are the main things that a Vaishnava has to do? He has to get up, he has to go and worship, he has to get ready and collect everything, go worship Krishna. He has to do his spiritual sadhana, right? After he finishes that spiritual sadhana, he has to study the scriptures and or teach them. So what is that? Yajana, patana, patana, right? Dana and pratigriya may come. Charity may come or charity may go. That's also there. But he has to then, after that, if he has some time left over, he may use that time to earn a living. So what are some of the ways which are accepted for Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavas here, accepted ways of earning a living? So here is the discussion of one's livelihood. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 11th chapter, verses 18 to 20, it's stated, in time of emergency, one may accept any various types of professions. Rita, Amrita, Rita, Pramrita, Satyanrita. These are all technical terms for different types of different methods of earning a living, like that. So we're not going to go into it in detail. If somebody wants to go into it in detail, we can look in the Smriti Shastras like Parasara Smriti, Vishnu Smriti, Manu Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti. These are all famous ones. We can even look in the different Apastamba, Bodhayana Sutras, different Dharma Shastras also. And we can see what it said about these words, and we can explain them, and we can explain exactly what it means if people are interested in these different types of professions. But the point being made here, the most important thing, one should not at any time accept the profession of a dog. The profession of a dog, here it means, it's meaning, what it's saying is that one should not work for another person who is perhaps not a Vaishnava. That's what they're trying to talk about here. So if we work for another person who's a Vaishnava, right? If we're a servant or a slave to somebody who's in fact, the Vaishnava feels that he is the slave of the Supreme Lord. I am the servant, I'm the slave, I'm the property of the Supreme Lord only, like that. Now, in saying that I'm the slave, I'm the property, I'm the servant of the Supreme Lord, it means also I am the slave, or I am the servant of all other Vaishnavas, because I see the Supreme Lord in all other Vaishnavas. And as we said before, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnum Aradhanam Param Tasmat Paratanam Devi Tariram Achanam means that higher than the worship of the Lord itself, which is the highest worship, is an even higher worship is worshipping that which is related to the Lord, which means his devotees. Like that. So to worship Krishna is great, is the supreme. But even greater than that is to worship the greatest devotee of Krishna, which is Radha. Even greater than that, let's say, these are all superlatives which can't be explained. Okay, in English we understand there's only one superlative. There's only one thing which is greatest. But in Sanskrit we can go on again saying everything is greatest. The worship of Krishna is the greatest. The worship of Radha is the greatest. The service of Radha and Krishna is the greatest. The service of the devotees of Krishna, the devotees of Radha are the greatest. Like that. So what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He says, after talking about different castes here, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, Brahmacharis, Vanaprasthas, Grihasthas, Vanaprasthas, Sannyasis, after talking about the arrangement of society, right, according to the Smriti Shastras, like that, and also according to the doctrines and practices of Vedanta, ultimately it comes all from the Vedas, Purusha Shukta, Brahmanosya Mokamasid, Bahu Raja Nikitaha, Rutarasiyad Vaishaha, Abhyam Sudra Jayata. Okay, so after talking about that Varnashram system, what does the Vaishnava say? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives us this quote, Naham Vipro, Nacha Narapati, Napi Vaishyo Nasudro, Naham Vani, Nacha Griyapati, No Varashto Yatirva, Kim tu Prodyan Nikila Paramananda Punamritabdeya, Gopi Bhartahu Padakamalayo, Dasa, Anudasaha. Anudasaha means a small servant, right? So, I am the servant of I am the small servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis, who are the servants of Krishna. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. He says, I'm not a learned Brahmana. I'm not a Kshatriya. I'm not a Vaishya. I'm not a Sudra. I'm not an intellectual administrator, a military person, an entrepreneur, a businessman, or a worker. I am not a student or a brahmachari or a grihasta, a householder, a retired person, a vanaprastha, or a renounced person, a sannyasi. I am none of these things. That is not the essence of what I am. Philosophically, I understand that I am the spirit soul, Jiva Swarupoi Nitya Krishna Das. I am the eternal servant of Lord Krishna, but I am also the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. I am also the servant of all these people who are serving Krishna. I'm servant of Radha. I'm the servant of the gopis. I'm the servant of the manjaris. I'm the servant of the gopas. I'm the servant of all the friends of Krishna. I'm the servant of all the devotees of Krishna. I'm the servant of all the previous acharyas. I'm the servant of my gurus, and I'm ultimately the service of all Vaishnavas. Vaishnava, right? Vanchikalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhu vayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Sri Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo is in the plural. It doesn't mean I'm the servant of only one Vaishnava. I'm a servant of all Vaishnavas. And who are all Vaishnavas? All living beings are ultimately Vaishnavas, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, everyone follows my path in all respects. Krishna says, right? That everybody actually is a servant of Krishna. Some people know it and some people don't know it. Some people are in Maya, some people are in illusion and they don't know it. But ultimately, they're all servants, they're all slaves, they're all property of the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna. So I am the servant of everyone. I am the lowest of the lowest. I am the one who is the Dasa Anudasa. King Kulashekara says, Britya Paricharika, Brityasya Britya. He says that I am the servant 7 times fold, 7 times removed of the Lord. The Lord has a servant who has a servant, 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 who has a servant. I'm that person's servant. I am that last person's servant. I'm Anudasaha. I am the servant of all the Vaishnavas. I am the servant of all the devotees. So what does it mean here to say we should not accept the profession of a dog? The profession of a dog is that he can be anybody's servant. Anybody that feeds him, anybody that feeds the dog, he becomes attached to that person. So we should not become attached to the service of others who are materialists, who are not Vaishnavas, right? Simply because they pay us a salary or we maintain our livelihood for that. That is considered to be a dog's profession, right? That's what he's talking about here. The profession Unchashila, collecting grains in the field, is called Rita. So here is explaining a little bit about this Rita, Amrita, Mrita, Pramrita, and Satyamrita. Okay, so this is described in Shmegi Shastras. Unchashila means collecting grains in the field. So when we grow wheat or rice in the field, when we come along and we harvest the rice, some of the rice or some of the wheat that is harvested is left in the field. There's some small amount which is left in the field. So it's an honest thing for a Brahmana or a Vaishnava to do, is he can go in the field and whatever's left over from the harvest, he can gather that up, and that can be the way that he makes his bread, makes his meals like that. Another way is to go and to beg, right? Like this is called unchavritti. One goes from house to house. This is not just for brahmacharis. Brahmacharis should go and do it. They're supposed to go from house to house and collect alms for the guru, who in the gurukula, in the family situation. Kula means family. The guru's family is called gurukula. So when you live with the guru and his wife in a family situation like that, and you go and you beg on behalf of them, right, for wood and for ghee and for grains and for different things to perform sacrifice, and you learn from the guru, the Vedas, and this is the traditional gurukul system. So the brahmacharis, they have to go, the celibate students, they have to go and they have to beg alms. Grihastas can also go and beg alms if they're vipras, if they're, this is the traditional system that people would go and do that, like that, and people would give them charity, like that. So Brahman can also accept charity, Vaishnava can also accept charity like that. The Vanaprasthas and sannyasis, they're more or less, they're also, the sannyasis also can go from door to door and they can be given some alms and things like this. This is all the situation in Asia. Still, if you go to many parts of Asia, you'll see in the early morning, you'll see Buddhist, especially Buddhist monks, they go around with a bowl and people come and they put a little rice in there, they put, whatever to sustain that monk for that day. And they get what they collect and they eat it at noon. They eat once a day, and then until the next day, they don't eat anything. So like that. So that's a type of, so here we're talking about collecting grains in the field. That's an honest profession. It's not the profession of a dog. Collecting without begging is called amrita. Begging grains, right, is called mrita. So that's what I was talking about, going around. In South India, that's called unchavritti, right? In North India, that's called madhukari. Madhukari is another name for bee, right? As a bee goes from flower to flower and collects a little bit of pollen here and there. So a person goes from house to house and gets a little bit in each house. He doesn't get completely fed or get a whole meal in one place. He just gets a little bit in each place. and he survives in that way. That is called begging grains, which is called mrita. Tilling the ground. Tilling the ground is you can, if you have a little bit of land, Lord Vamana, when the Lord came as a Brahmin, he requested Bali to give him 3 steps of land, which is just enough to lay down in, actually. But if a Brahmin has some land, or a Vipra or a Vaishnava has some land, he can also cultivate some fruit trees, some grains, some vegetables in a garden. Right? This is called pramrita, right? And trading. He can trade some things. He can engage in trade, and this is called satyanrita. These are all acceptable professions. These are not the profession of a dog, right? So engaging in the service of low grade people. What do we mean by low grade people? Specifically here in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, when we say low grade people, we mean non-Vaishnavas. We don't mean low grade Vaishnavas, because all Vaishnavas are considered high class, right? Right? Even if the person is not so intelligent, or even if whatever material designation that person has, right? If he's a Vaishnava, he's considered to be better than a person who is a non-Vaishnava. Even if that person who is a Nobel Prize winner, or a Nobel Prize winner, or a great scientist, or a great intelligent person, or a great military person, or a great businessman, if he's not a Vaishnava, he's nothing. He's considered to be low class in Vaishnava society. So, however, swavriti is a profession of dogs. The service of low class people, low grade people, it's translated here. I could say it means the service of non-Vaishnavas. Now, sometimes it says one should not even in times of emergency be the servant of non-Vaishnavas. So, as far as possible, we should try to maintain the material body and the family, right, of Vaishnavas by not being the servant of non-Vaishnavas. But it may happen that in this material world that's not possible. In that case, we have to see that everybody is ultimately a Vaishnava and everyone follows Lord Krishna's ultimately, even they know it or they don't know it, and we simply have to try to find the best position, best social situation as possible. Okay, so continuing on. Text 256 says, it is reproachable for a person to engage in service of those who are lower than himself for the purpose of earning his livelihood. This is the verdict of saintly persons. This is especially reproachable for Vaishnavas. Right. But we should not think that another Vaishnava is a person who is lower than us. Right? If I serve another Vaishnava, we can't look at another Vaishnava and consider all the material designations of that person, their caste, their creed, their gender, their any other materialistic faults that we might see when we're thinking about this. We can serve other Vaishnavas. We can serve other Vaishnavas, and especially we should serve the more advanced Vaishnavas. But we can serve even the less advanced Vaishnavas because they're Vaishnavas. We don't consider them to be low class or not worthy of respect or not worthy of service. We will serve any Vaishnava. Okay, so continuing on, text 257, 258 says, those who have declared that service to others is the profession of a dog have not spoken correctly. There's a gulf of difference between a freely wandering dog and a servant who has sold his life. After eating food given by sinful fallen Brahmanas who earn their livelihood by serving low-class men, even at the risk of their lives, the risk of their spiritual lives, one must observe the vow of Chandramrita to purify himself. It said Chandramrita here, but what he says we can be very clear in the Sanskrit, it says Chandrayaana. So we discussed the Chandrayaana fasting system before, where one fasts over the month and increases what he's eating every day in the waxing part or fortnight of the moon, and in the waning fortnight decreases. So usually we start on the day after the Purnima, the full moon, and we decrease what we're eating by one handful or one mouthful, from 15 mouthfuls to 0. And when we come to the new moon or the Amavasya, we fast completely. And then on the way of the waxing moon, as the waxing fortnight comes along, we increase slowly back to 15 handfuls or mouthfuls of food. Like that, one more mouthful per day. Like that, one more handful per day. So let's have a look at it again. It says, those who have declared that service to others is a profession of a dog have not spoken correctly. So there's a gulf of difference between a freely wandering dog and a servant who is sold for life. So we should try to avoid that, being a particular sold out servant to somebody other than the Supreme Lord or his Vaishnava devotees. Right? In some Vaishnava scriptures, it talks about all service is a dog's life. And that is refuted because service to a great personality is actually a great thing. Like that. So one may say, all service is bad. You know, if I have to serve somebody, that's bad, right? If I should be the master and I shouldn't serve others. But actually, a person who's a servant of a king, a person who is a servant of a great personality, what to speak of the Supreme Lord and his devotees, that person actually enjoys a good standard of living, like that servant. Okay, so here he's talking about the difference between a dog which is not attached to any particular master, but may go to different places like that. So if you say, okay, I will not work for you exclusively, but I will work for different people, and that's considered different. So after eating food given by sinful fallen Brahmanas, right, intellectuals, who earn their livelihood by serving low-class men, even at the risk of their lives, that could mean their spiritual life or even the material life, one must observe the vow of Chandrayaana fasting to purify himself. Now, we have the examples in Gaudiya Vaishnavism of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, who were Brahmins. They were Vaishnava Brahmins. They were born in high-class Brahmin families, but they came to work for the Nawab or the Muslim ruler of Bengal at the time. And they even got so close to the Muslim society and to working for the Muslims that they even got Muslims' names. Their names were Dabir Kash and Shakar Malik. So Shakar Malik, everybody knows Malik in India. Malik means master, and it's an Urdu name. Everybody knows. If somebody says to me, my name is Malik, it's a very common name, like Patel. It's a common Indian name. But if the guy says he's Malik, he's a Muslim. Like that. Shakar Malik. You know, Dabir Kash, this is also a Muslim name. So these are the names that they had. So they were rejected from ordinary Brahminical society as fallen Brahmins because they worked so closely and so intimately for the Muslims. They had accepted the service of a dog. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enlightened them, they came along and they came to the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they gave up that. They gave up the opulent lifestyle of serving the ruler of Bengal because he was a Muslim, because he was a non-Vaishnava, and they became free of that. And so what they're saying is, if you're in a situation like that, you're supposed to perform the Chandrayaana fasting after you do that to purify your body. We could also note another example of this is grandfather Bhishma. Bhishma is a Mahajan. He's considered to be one of the great devotees. Great Vaishnavas, right? However, he fought on the side of evil. He fought on the side of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana's 100 brothers in the Kurukshetra war. So why did he do that? Why did he fight on that side against Krishna, against Arjuna and the Pandavas? Because he was living in the house of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, and he was accepting their food. So here it was mentioned in the previous verse that a person, it was mentioned somewhere here was mentioned about eating the food. Oh yeah, in this verse itself, after eating food given by sinful fallen brother. So he was eating food of Duryodhana, and therefore he was sustaining his body. He owed them. He owed the Kauravas his loyalty as the head of their army on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because he was living in their house and accepting their food. So if we don't want to be indebted to materialists, to people who are non-Vaishnavas, then we shouldn't live with them. We shouldn't take their food. We shouldn't accept anything from them. because we don't want to be indebted to them like that. We don't want to adopt a dog's life like this. So Bhishma, therefore, he fought against Krishna, and Krishna actually enjoyed fighting with Bhishma, but Bhishma is this great devotee. But at the end, only at the end of the Mahabharata war, after the Mahabharata war was over, Bhishma's body was completely shot through full of arrows, and he was lying on the bed of arrows. All the blood that was created in his body from eating the food of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, which was stopping him, which is meaning that he was indebted to them, to the Kauravas, right? That all drained away. And once that all drained away, he was still able to maintain his life, even without blood in his body. And he could give spiritual instructions. So at that time, he answered many questions by Yudhisthira on religiosity. And he explained about Krishna consciousness. And he even spoke the Vishnu Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Vishnu, which is very famous, is there in Mahabharata. This only could have been done by Bhishma after all the blood that was created by eating the sinful food of the sinful people, the Kauravas, that after that had drained away from his body. Okay, so anyway, we should do the Chandrayaana fasting if we find ourselves in that position, and we get free from that position to purify ourselves. So text 259, if one experiences difficulty in earning a livelihood by proper means, then he can accept food from Sudras under certain circumstances. So normally in the type of medieval ordinary materialistic smarta varnashram system, which was going on in India and which is still going on to a certain extent in India, not so much because modern society has changed India a lot. So all throughout Asia, they had this sort of this type of society. So especially in India, if you were in a higher class or a higher caste, you were not supposed to take food. Even today, there are many higher class caste people in India. They won't take food that is prepared or is given to them by anybody of a higher caste, of a lower caste. Right. So they consider that to be contaminated to them, like that. They lose their caste their high caste status if they take food. Like we said with Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, who were associating so intimately with the Muslims, right? The Muslim rulers of Bengal. So they considered to be Brahma Bandhus or fallen Brahmanas. The word Brahma Bandhu means a friend of a Brahmana. So if I say somebody's a friend of a Brahmana, it means he's not a Brahmana. He's associated with a Brahmana. He has some association with a Brahmana. He may look like a Brahmana, but he's not a Brahmana. He's not really a Brahmana because he's broken his caste. He's broken his class by taking food from non-Vaishnavas or non-Brahmins, like that, or low-class people, let's say, like that. So if one experiences difficulty in earning his livelihood by proper means, then he can accept food from Shudras. Now, here it's unclear exactly what it means by Shudras here, because previously in the fifth Vilas, we were talking about initiation and we were talking about Puja. No, in the second Vilas, we were talking about initiation. In the fifth Vilas, we were talking about Puja. And there was an example given that there are some recommendations in the scriptures that women and Shudras cannot touch shalagram, otherwise the Lord feels like it's a thunderbolt if a Shudra or a woman touches shalagram. So the Goswamis, Gopal Bhatta and Sanatana Goswami, have pointed out this is wrong mentality. This is okay for ordinary Shudras and ordinary women. But for Vaishnava Shudras and Vaishnava women, when we say Vaishnava Shudras, we mean the term used there was Shat Shudra, a Sat Shudra, a Shudra who follows eternal rules of Vaishnavism. So he may be born in a Shudra family or in a non-Vaishnava family, but he's a Vaishnava. He becomes a Vaishnava, or the lady is a Vaishnava. She's a Vaishnavi. Those people can also perform the shalagram worship. So here, when it says we can accept food from Shudras under certain circumstances, I would say that it means it means two things. It can be taken in two ways. One way, because it's in a Vaishnava scripture, it means that even though those Shudras are Shudras, even those people are considered low class because of their caste or their birth, right? Still, because they're Vaishnavas, we can accept their food. Secondly, if we're just taking it to be a prescription of the ordinary materialistic Smarta Varnashram system and not the Daivi Varnashram system, right, then we can understand it to also mean, right, that even a person who's a Shudra, if he is well behaved, maybe he's even not a Vaishnava, but if we have difficulties in maintaining a livelihood, we can even accept food from such people like that, as long as they're not completely inimical and completely averse to Vaishnavism. Now, the Buddhists in Asia, they take it a little bit further than this. There are some Buddhists that will accept anything that is given to them. So whether meat is given to them, whether liquor is given to them, whatever is given to them, they'll accept. Vaishnavas don't do that. Vaishnavas accept only pure foodstuffs that are given to them. And specifically when we're begging, if we're begging for foodstuffs or begging for alms, the better type of alms or foodstuffs to accept is uncooked foodstuffs, which we can then cook ourselves. That's the best type. Secondarily, if we have to accept cooked food, right, we should try to accept from Vaishnavas or high class people. But certainly, when it says here accepting food from Shudras, it's going to mean vegetarian food for sure. So now we're going to just stop here. This is a good place to stop. 262 and 262 talks about the proper means of earning one's livelihood.